reaching out, and my heart is with you. So much in between, things we've never seen. You're a mirage that my mind can't see through. Are you here with me? One day we can see. And all my life, unbroken ways, but I know that time makes ways. But I know that time makes ways. And all my life, unbroken ways, but I know that time makes ways. But I know that time makes ways. Yeah, I know that time makes ways. All my life, unbroken ways, but I know that time makes ways. But I know that time makes ways. And will my life be there one day? All I know is frozen waves, but I'm hoping time makes ways. I'm holding on to the image of you, live from far away, information highway. You're a mirage that my mind will cling to. Though you're far away, we can make a way. All my life, unbroken ways, but I know that time makes ways. Yeah, I know that time makes ways.
Tinsley sends it to the outside. He can't get there. Kevin King is going to win the Barbizzel FTF Cup Series. Down to the lead. Bud gets wrecked in front of the pack. He saves it. 3-4 wide as they come to the white flag. Here comes Vargas down on the apron. They are going wide. Ian Plash will win it at the line. Is this package? Oh, there goes Jordan Lopez Jr. That's your race leader. Caution flag is out.
Still no one willing to give up as they're going to be dead even off of the first chicane.
Oh, he saves it. What's going to happen here? Here comes the canvas. Oh! Get your front there.
He's got it. He's got it.
Canvas is in.
While many drivers leave Detroit licking their wounds, they'll find little relief hopping across the border to Canada. Mosport has a fierce reputation of creating unpredictable races in this series. Keep your guard up because it's going to get wild as we get ready to watch round 9 of the Autobahn Sportscar Challenge, and you'll see it all live here on FTF.gg. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Jake Sperry and Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director, Zach Johnson. And Joey, I'm not kidding in that intro about this place tending to put up a wild one. It almost always is chaos here.
Yeah, well, very high-speed corners, sweeping corners, which means high downforce levels, and that means a lot of closing speed between the two classes, and 10 turns here at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park are known as Mosport, and kicks off action turns 1 and 2 immediately. Turn 2 here is one of the most known corners in motorsports. Huge elevation change and commitment with top speed, and then one of the most important corners, Moss Corner down there, turn 5, which is the launch out onto the back straightaway, with potentially one of the best passing opportunities going into turn 8, or maybe even getting somebody off of their line to get a pass done going into turn 10 right before start finish.
Now, as for the championship, Jake, despite two of our class points leader not showing up last round, they're both still in the points lead.
That they still are, and that's what drop rounds absolutely do. Nathan Olsen 43 points clear of Billy Smith II, which just allows that gap to slowly close in. Carter Kundinger is in third at the moment, with Nate Grzelski and Paul Gibson in a race in the championship for fourth and fifth. Dominic Durnenberg is in sixth position, with Mo Islam, Dion Fiallo, Joshua Wolf, and Paul Darling rounding out the top 10. It's a very interesting field. There's a number of quick drivers who are all in there, all looking to go out there and really push. And what you'd have to say as well, Joe, is that you look down that field, and I look at the drivers in 11th and 12th, a former pro driver in the World Championship, and a driver who, quite frankly, could reach that level in Jeffrey Ooms. It's a stacked championship.
It is absolutely. And of course, over in the GT Pro category as well, Ross Booth is the other one that didn't show and is still up on the top. Johan Shirazi and Bradley Haley both kind of faltered. And Nathan Jew was only able to get a third place on a day that he could have made big inroads on Ross Booth. So there remains quite a large gap up there, at least for the time being, although it's a close fight for that fourth spot. Look at Haley, Castile, and Cast, only split by 5 points currently. We also have the GTMs here. Joey, where are we sitting on those drivers currently?
It's a pretty close field right now. Luke Schmidt leads the way with 199 points total, and then pretty evenly split from first through sixth, with about 10 to 15 points separating each driver. Robert Rattray, Nicholas Davis, Corey Ensing, Shane Hunter, and Franco Margarella all kind of fighting for those final championship points here and inside kind of that top 5.
That takes us to the grid, where the cars are pretty much all out there already. They're just waiting for the drivers' meeting to finish up. Jake, you're covering the prototypes. What's our 17-car field look like up there?
Very good. If your name is apparently Paul, it's Paul Darling and Paul Gibson who share the front row of the grid. Robert Tinsey will go from third, with Peter Houston in fourth. Following then your two championship leaders, fifth and sixth on the third row, Billy Smith II and Nathan Olsen. Carter Kundinger will go from seventh, with Nate Grzelski eighth. Thomas Fisher starts off in ninth. And in 10th position is Joshua Wolf. Over then to 11th, it is Vance Bow following Dominic Durnenberg, with Mo Islam, Eddie Layton, Robert Kansian, Leif Pettersson, and then Chris Sherburn rounding out the 17-car field.
Then you get to the GT cars, with Ross Booth taking the pro pole and Johan Shirazi going to be starting next to him. Can he manage to beat Ross out there today? Bradley Haley will start from third, as Ross Park will be P4. Then it's Ryan Robertson in fifth position, as Sheldon Rosenbaum takes the AM pole here, sixth overall, not too shabby. He's got Robert Rattray. The next AM is going to be starting just behind him, so he'll have to try and run away and hide. Robert Cast will start in eighth. And then it's Adam Satterfield, another of our AMs, third on that class. He's got, on the outside of that row, it's Corey Ensing. Joey?
And then an 11th overall in GT, fifth in AM is Franco Margarella. Then we got Eric Thomas, Luke Schmidt in 13th, Tom Hammond in 14th, Brian Bennett, Andrew Lunsford, Jimbo Pfeiffer, and the only McLaren down there in 17th, Christopher Pies, Shane Hunter, and Mark Kedrowski in 20th place in GT overall.
21st goes to Ed Eisenring. Kyle Pitson will be 22nd. Jason Iverson in 23rd. From there, Nick Olas will start 24th. Patrick McDaniel 25th. Sean Reese 26th. And the last of them will be Dale Green today, as the drivers are out on track and rolling on their pace lap now.
This is going to be a fantastic run race. You've got an hour on the clock. You know that you've got to make the pit stop. And the one thing, Joe, that I'm looking at here from these drivers is those opening 4 corners. Those are the big difference makers when we get to traffic. And because this is a short lap, just 65 seconds for the fastest time in qualifying, lap traffic's going to come by pretty quickly, pretty regularly, and pretty often. So you're going to get this chopping and changing feel over the race where you can lose 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds over the course of a lap, but very easily gain it back again.
Yeah, we heard Joey talking about the differences in speed, and it's not just that, Joey, but there's not that many long straightaways, and the cars are constantly crossing over on that racing line.
Correct. Yeah, you only have the one long straightaway, and even though there's plenty of space to play out here on the racetrack, it gets pretty narrow at points, and there's only one racing line when you have those high downforce and high-speed sweeping corners, and eventually 2 cars are going to try to go for the same spot out here.
I will be absolutely gobsmacked if we get all 44 drivers to the checkered flag on this one. It tends to take its toll, but we'll see. You know, we've seen weirder things in Autobahn before as they get ready to take the green flag with Darling and Gibson on the front row. Pace car peels in. Darling has control, waiting patiently here out of White's corner, and he is on the throttle. Green flag is out. Not the greatest of starts for Gibson, but Tinsey almost looks like he backs out of it, and that's going to allow Houston to try and challenge on Billy Smith as they fly down into Clayton Corner. Let's see if we get through here clean. Mostly single file up at the top, but it looks like, Joey, it's time to go back to the start of the GTs.
The GT cars are coming out of the final corner right now, and Ross Booth gets on the loud pedal. Really good jump from our front 2, Ross and Jonathan Shirazi here. Looks like Bradley Haley's going to settle into the 3rd place single file for the most part.
The championship leader, Nathan Olson, has spun it coming to Moss.
He goes to the back of the field in the prototypes. He does get it going. The question is how much damage is on the car, because it did look like he made contact with the wall based on the tire tracks we could see there. So that is horrible news for him, Jake.
It is absolutely. He was fighting with Carter Kundinger. There was no contact between the two. It was simply put cold tyres down through turn 4. And that, for Olsen, is going to be, potentially, if he can't get this one back through the race and back up the positions, him dropping a boatload of points, and especially the drop rounds, which are so important.
Yeah, considering he wasn't here last week, he's already got a 0, so that safety net has disappeared out from under him. He's got to try and make up some spots on a track where it is hard to pass, as our leaders in the GT category come up to the S's for the first time in anger. Booth ahead of Shirazi, ahead of Haley, so no change for those first 3 positions.
No, yeah, pretty calm start from Ross Booth out front, but we got to remember this is still the tire warm-up phase right now, and looks like Corey Ensing got turned around coming out of the final corner here, but really, Joe, I'm surprised that there hasn't been more pushing and shoving.
And Kyle Pitson does almost the exact same thing and just about runs into him as he spins off. I think 2 unrelated incidents there, as Kyle's going to get it turned back around, hopefully before Paul Darling reaches him, because Paul's actually already into the S's himself.
He is, and he's going to take this left right now through the penultimate corner. You can see that there, and into the final corner out on track, just out of the way then. So Kyle Pitson will have to take a run into the pits. But it's been a nice start for Paul Darling over Paul Gibson. 0.8 of a second the margin. Not enough really to break away as such, but it is getting interesting around P5, because Peter Houston is now going to have to be worried about Carter Kundinger just behind. Houston doesn't quite have a problem at the moment, but we do have great battling down the hill. Vance Bow playing defense to Nate Grzelski.
Nate unable to get the position for now. Dominic Dornenberg and Mo Islam right behind them. Islam missing out on a good opportunity for a decent finish at Detroit, hoping to try and avoid having similar problems out here at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Way wide there for Grzelski. Keeps it on the tarmac, though, but he certainly used up every inch of it.
Well, you've got a road tax for a reason. They tell you can use all of the road, and he's going to go to the inside trying to get it as Islam and Durnenberg switch places behind. Team orders there, but getting that run on the inside, you've got the path of least resistance over towards turn 8. Grzelski takes the natural racing line, slightly misses the opening apex to gather back up that second apex leading into turn 9, and the position comfortably made on Vance Bow.
So there's an overtake there for that number 69 machine, Josh Wolf. The next one up the road and not too far up ahead is somebody looks like they've gone off in turn 4.
I believe that's Ed Eisringsing out here, and he's way out there in that portion. We got the prototype field coming through at a high clip of speed.
It looked like there that it was Nick Olus who had an incident, and it might be that Eisenring there, maybe, Joey, was an innocent bystander.
Yeah, and that was...
And I just want to report, we actually have a change for the lead. Ross Booth went wide in Moss Corner, and Johan Shirazi to the point.
Taking advantage of that. And now I see Josh Wolf dropping positions. There he is on screen out of Moss Corner. Falls down to 15th position. That helps out Nathan Olson. He gets another spot for that, but he's only up into 14th now. Well, make that 13th. There you saw the purple car of Nathan just managing to go by Eddie Layton.
It was just a little bit too deep from Josh Wolf, carried too much speed. I will note that Josh Wolf has a very, very loose machine out there, Joe. It's very squirrely on the rear tyres, and as such, he is going to be dancing with the limit a lot all day. He's right now racing with Leif Peterson at this point in time, and this is going to mean that for Joshua Wolf, he's going to have a lot of work to do, and his confidence will have been hit by the issue he had going up the hill at Moss Corner, the toughest corner on track.
Yeah, I mean, that's the corner that also cost Booth the lead because Shirazi, as was mentioned, is now in front of him. And on top of things, they are coming across a bit of this traffic that had issues early in the race in the GT classes. So already Darling Gibson having to dice their way past them.
I tell you what, Joey, they're doing such a good job, but what do you have to do when you are being lapped? I mean, you've got experience. You were on that graphic earlier on here today. What do you have to do as lap traffic in terms of a race like this where it is going to be so frequent to see?
Ooh, hold your breath, right? These prototype guys, as you see, are going around the outside of some of the GT cars. They have such high downforce levels that they make grip completely different areas in the GT cars. So you kind of just have to be aware, stick to your line, and be consistent.
Oh, Cunninger's in the wall. Cunninger in the pit wall, and he had help there as he was being really aggressive through the traffic. He just made the move on Peter Houston, and he gets a tap then on a slow Billy Smith II.
Yeah, Billy Smith spinning up the tires, and Kundinger took a good thwack to the right-hand side. They're going to try and find their way past. Look at that, just weaving in and outside of the GT cars as they fly their way through Clayton and then Quebec. I know we have some replays lined up, but I'm seeing if we've got more excitement on our way since this is the first time they're heading through the field, and it is so packed up in here, Jake.
Oh, it is. It's effectively you're playing a game of sardines. Everyone is bottled up and wants to try and get going ASAP, and nobody wants to play the waiting game here. You ask a driver to be patient, they don't want to. No driver really wants to be patient. Paul Darling has broken away at the front of the field, but about 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, they're all there. They're all trying to navigate a way through the pack. It's a really interesting foray at the moment.
I think they've made their way through some of the thicker traffic there. And I think we've got an opportunity now. Is Vance Bow, off through the second part of the S's.
And it can so easily happen as well because you are dancing at the very limits, heading towards turns 8 and 9, which is the prime place to make overtakes. He was side by side with Nathan Olson, who was making a recovery through the field, and he just gets the curb and a snap, and he had no room left then after that, Joe, to go anywhere because he had a prototype behind him.
Yeah, scary stuff for him. In fact, speaking of mentioning him, well, Tom Hammond went off track as well immediately behind. It was unrelated, but he hit the wall, and it looks like the car is too damaged to continue. Since we're talking about Nathan Olson, we're not going to get to that replay. It feels like Carter Kundinger now goes traipsing through the grass on the infield of Moss Corner and eventually finds his way back, but that sends him down to 15th. Again, Carter, one of the drivers fighting for the championship in the prototypes, and this will not do him any favors.
Well, in the wall with the first effort, and then finding himself taking a rallycross route going up forward. He's not having much fun out there today, Joe, that much I can say. But when you know that you've got to stay close and you've got a championship to think about, it's so easy to go out there and just overdrive the car. And I think that's what Carter's doing right now.
Oh, and he's off yet again, coming out of White's corner. Did he actually get the wall there? I was looked away for just a brief second, and it seems this has just been an action-packed race for Carter and not in the way that he was looking for.
No, this is a shame for him at the moment. He's got to just put his head down, get a couple clean laps in the books, get her past all of the lap traffic, and then he can start focusing on something a little bit more important in his race, which is finding those positions back up through the field as he has dropped back to 15th place in this one. He navigates some traffic. He'll have a lot more to deal with in this race. But I tell you what, around about Thomas Fisher, I think is getting rather interesting because we got 4 lined up. There's second position Paul Gibson, but look at this little group that's starting to encroach on everything. And this is coming right up here, Joey, on the likes of Bradley Haley, some of the leaders in the category.
Yeah, going by Young Park, Bradley Haley right now coming up to our GT overall leaders. And you're right, 4 prototypes stacked in. And this is the part in the race that you have 2 different races going on. Got to play nice on that playground.
So far, so good. They made it past Haley, and at least 2 of them did. 3 wide heading into Clayton corner, and are they going to be able to come out the other side? They are. Nathan Olson with a brilliant move. I know we're still waiting on his first replay, but I kind of want to bookmark that one for later because that was brave stuff.
I think he's got a death wish, Joe. He's got an absolute death wish. He was about a millimetre away from tagging the GT car on the inside, and then that would have been his race over. When you've got a championship lead like this, yes, you can be aggressive like he's just been there on Thomas Fisher. He's just said, this is my track. I'm going to try and own it the best I can. You just can't afford to be that aggressive. You can't afford to put your race in jeopardy. And he is taking liberties right now out there with the way that he's going. And look at that then from Mo Islam just in front. The cheeky tyre dip then starts to come into play.
All right, I think we finally have an opportunity here. And since we're looking at Olson, let's see what put him in this position down at the start of the race. And this was into Moss Corner. I'm not sure if he had any sort of help. Remember, he wasn't starting up at the front like he usually does. Oh, he touched the grass. Just put himself there.
And that's how quickly it can go from bad to worse. These Dallara P217s are very, very fragile from time to time. And we haven't talked really track temperatures out there as we take a little look at what happened to Eisenring. Bang! That's the big hit that it takes out the Porsche, and it's a huge, huge incident. But it's only 25 degrees out there in Imperial. So when you got in Fahrenheit, it's only, 65, 70 Fahrenheit? It's a cold track.
Yeah, 77 Fahrenheit on the track right now, and it is a little bit late in the day, as this is what happened with Bao, as he found himself into the wall. And man, look at how it hops over some of the little lumps that we've got in the grass here, and he immediately takes it into pit lane. And let's see, that's Hammond going off that we saw the end of, unfortunately. And I just noticed, I didn't realize before, on the bottom of the screen, that was Olson 2 wheels off out of Clayton.
I told you he's pushing, and he's going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing in this race. That's what number 32 knows. And then this is what happens to Carter Cunning. Again, he just bottoms out over that curb into the grass. You can see there he has a nice view of the signage. So if you ever want some tyres, you might need a couple of Continentals on it.
Well, he's going to crawl his way back up there. And then his second incident in which he does wind up in the outside wall very, very hard. And wasn't it him that got tipped into the inside wall a little bit earlier trying to pass somebody?
Well, he knows both sides of the circuit now, so there should be no excuses from here on out, Joe.
Well, his excuse is that he's at pit lane now. He's had enough of it. I'm not sure if he's going to try and get back out on track, but he does have a meatball flag, so he has required repairs. Meanwhile, coming around out of White's corner, looks like we've got the battle between Billy Smith and Robert Tenzi to decide the last step on the podium in the prototypes.
We do, and these two, you can see the same livery on them, so they are teammates out there, and it's Billy Smith who's actually got through on Robert Tinsey over the course of that last lap. So an important change of position for Billy Smith, knowing that Nathan Olsen is making places and is back up into, get this, 7th position already within 15 minutes of the issue sending him to the back of the field. That's a hurry-up message. I've got to get on, I've got to get moving. It's 3 seconds to Paul Gibson.
Billy Smith took the win last time out at Detroit, and he even said he knew this is what he needed when Olsen was gone to try and catch him back up. Not sure if the win is necessarily on this time, but, I mean, last time out, Joey, it was Gibson and Darling that were leading, and Billy Smith did win the race.
You're right, and it was a little bit of that two-class mixture that I believe took out both Pauls there, and right now, about 15 minutes into the race, I don't think we're going to have to worry about that first wave through traffic so much as they've already gone through it, but there's going to be plenty more times through the GT traffic, and who knows what else can happen with 45 minutes.
Looks like things separating out a little bit here in the prototypes. Let's head back to 4th in the GT Pros because Young Park is attacking Haley for 3rd now, along with Ryan Robertson just behind him as they come up into the S's. Haley's going to cover off the inside in that Audi, trying to cling to that outside line to see if he can get the advantage into the second half. Park tries to cling dearly, but no, now he's vulnerable. Here comes Robertson attacking him through White's corner. He can't get the exit off of it. Robert Cass now has a chance, but he's going to lift before they hit turn 1.
Under that ebb and flow of that final sector there, it's really tough. And oh no, looks like we got one of our, this is a satellite car around in Moss Corner. Who's this, Thomas Fisher?
That is indeed Thomas Fisher. He falls to 13th from that one. And I don't think he was not in that fight earlier, so he was already behind. He just dipped his wheels off into the gravel and thankfully didn't hit anything, but now he's having to fend off Eddie Layton, who's to his inside, coming up to the S's. The 73 is just slightly ahead using the downforce of that car. Fisher can't hang. He's now going to have to officially give up the spot.
A professor's move there from Leighton as he made sure that one worked out. But for Thomas Fisher there, he gets caught out by the high curb over on the outside of Moss Corner. It's so easy just to get over the top. And speaking of which, is that Paul Gibson in second? It is. And his race over and done with. And that, all by his own accord, pushing to chase Paul Darling. And it's Quebec Corner which has got him by pushing too fast.
Have to admit, Jake, that's not the corner I thought that would give him or anybody problems on his own. He did have a little arrow wait because I think he was coming up on Corey Ensing. We're going to see the replay here, Jake.
Look, this is as simple gets. He understeers, he's in the grass, and at that point, bang, passenger. Doesn't look like much, doesn't feel like much, but my goodness, has that done a lot for the suspension, and that then, underneath the Continental Bridge, is his race over, and Paul Gibson, seemingly over the last 2 races, can't catch a break.
No, well, this does a lot of good for Paul Darling because he's still got 4.5 seconds of Billy Smith, so really not too many worries about what's behind at this stage. And just like that, in a flash, things can certainly go awry at this track. Plunging down the hill. Now we watch Dominic Dornenberg as he tries to keep up with his teammate Mo Islam, but they've separated by about a second at this phase. Gruchelski ahead of them, though, and Peter Houston are basically locked in.
They are, and this is important right now because you got someone like Peter Houston who's trying to chase down and make time up and gain those positions, and Houston maybe in the early stage of the race just wanted to sit back, wanted to settle down a little bit, but now he wants to go out there and go forward. But Nate Grzelski all of a sudden wants to try and get into the picture. They're not going to make a move because the traffic's going to say nope, don't want to get there, and that would have been Jimbo Pfeiffer who would have negated that. Brian Bennett negates it then at turn 9, and by the time they reach the final corner of White, they find themselves then at turn 10, and once more they can't make the move into 1 because there's more traffic that they have to navigate. Shane Hunter, the AM this time, and suddenly here's Nathan Olsen, who is there effectively like the big bad wolf trying to take places.
I was just going to say he's joined the Tea Party very quickly, and now he's potentially up to fourth if he can dispose of these two quite fast. Now, he's shown himself to be pretty savvy, if not a little bit chaotic today when it comes to slicing through the traffic and the other cars, even within his class. This time it looks like he's successful down into Moss Corner. He rocks up on the rear wing of Gruchelski, needs the exit, and this is going to be iffy on it whether he's close enough or not for the slipstream.
Well, here's the issue. He might have slipstream, but so too does Grzelski, because they will latch onto the back of Houston, who will use Schmidt, and that is one of the McLarens they're off there.
It is, yeah. That's Jimbo Pfeiffer there that seems to have also done similar to Carter Kundinger and found the inside of Moss Corner. He's going to get it turned around and rolling, but he falls all the way to 22nd because of that error.
He certainly does. Through then goes Nathan Olsen. He gets the pass done at turn 9, using a little bit of a pick there with Eric Thomas, the lap traffic there. But now he's got eyes on Peter Houston. And Houston, you've got a problem. You've got someone like Nathan Olsen behind you, who's not going to want to wait and sit about then when it comes to the moves. He wants to get through absolutely right now. And Nathan Olsen, a 108.7 over that last lap, was only a couple of tenths, despite making overtakes behind the pace of your race leader, Paul Darling.
It's impressive stuff. Now, I wonder if Nathan Olsen needs to be just a little bit wary here, Joey, because Houston's earned a bit of a reputation in this series, so maybe he just needs to take care here.
Yeah, I know that there's been some chat going on those forums, the Discord pages and whatnot, and Peter Houston is... I know, look at this. This is going through the GT-AM leaders as well, coming up to the GT Pro guys, and big shove in the back there.
Maybe it's Houston who needs to worry. That was Nathan that got into the back of him instead, as he gives him the hurry up. Obviously, they can only go so fast. It was very single file with so many of those cars through there. Oh, he's going to get picked off maybe. No, he's going to find space. Look at that. That was incredible.
Nathan Olsen just doesn't know what the brake pedal is, and sometimes you just close your eyes and make a move, and he closed his eyes. He made an incredible little pass there to move up through. Peter Houston is probably just still blinking about 3 corners back, going, what happened there?
I thought for sure that was going to be a wreck, but look at this. Houston maybe got a little damage from that contact. That, or he's letting Gruchelski by, who puts himself back into 5th. Olsen is already gone. He is chasing on Robert Tinsley up in front of him.
I'll tell you what, Robert Tinsley is the sort of driver who is respected far and wide. If you've been in sim racing for over 5, 6, 7 years, you know who Robert Tinsley is. You know how good he can be on his day. He's racing in cars that he likes to race, in series that he likes to race. He's now got the inside, but Olsen is going to go around the outside, is going to pick up the move, and there's no arguments at turn 9. Robert Tinsley has to leave the room, and I tell you what, Nathan Olsen has made turn 9 his corner, Joe, over this race. Every time I see him driving through, he's got an extra 20 kilometers an hour, an extra 8, 9 miles an hour compared to everyone else. He's just not afraid to carry the speed.
He made Robert Tinsley look like he was an LMP3 there. That was unbelievable. Oh, my goodness. Again, 2 wheels off on the exit of Clayton Corner. What has gotten into Nathan Olsen today? For a driver that has never finished off the podium in the entire season, except for when he didn't show up, he's certainly flirting with disaster on managing to get to the end of this race.
Speaking of, there is an issue for one of them. That's Leif Peterson, who finds himself around at the opening corner. So that is how quickly it can go wrong. And he's going to have to do a many-point turn to get that back out and going again. He's going to have to wait for a gap in the traffic. And this is one of the few places, Joe, where you say, oh, you wait for a gap in the traffic. You might be waiting a whole lap to get going again.
Maybe a few laps, honestly, in this series. Well, he could have gotten going there. Now he's able to start to exit out, and he's on his way, but he falls to last on the field, except for Carter Kundinger of those who are racing right now. Carter's 10 laps down, I'm seeing, from Paul Darling after he took his repairs.
Yeah, so he's right down at the back. And just note who's behind him right now, Leif Peterson. That is Paul Darling making the move. And that is the first LMP then a lap down without issue, so to speak, in this race. So that's an important moment in terms of the race right now, because it means you get same category lap traffic, which doesn't happen often, but here it happens more often than you think it does.
And it's a different beast to try and lap cars that have the same straight line speed as you, of course. Meanwhile, Joey, it seems like Bradley Haley is bound and determined to not give up this third place.
No, he's in the lone Audi out there, and he's got 2 Porsches and a Ferrari being chased by, and doesn't stop there. Actually, right behind him is the battle for the AM lead as well between Sheldon Rosenbaum and Adam Satterfield. And really, I would call this, look at that train, about 7 or 8 GT cars, and at the front of it is Bradley Haley. But the thing is, these guys can't get by Bradley, and he's not making any mistakes. He's driving a great race out front.
We've seen this story before here where drivers take out a little bit of wing, make sure and use whatever straight line advantage they can, and it's very difficult to go by. They're going to be lapped by Thomas Fisher here in the prototypes, who splits them momentarily. Not great for Young Park, but fantastic for Bradley Haley to have that buffer at least shortly, and now he's gone.
Yeah, just like that. And little bit of a breathing distance now that separated out these GT cars, and I don't think it's going to be long before Young Park and Robert Cass close it back up. Those 2 composite cars have been consistently faster than Bradley Haley, but it's just such a hard track to pass on, Joe.
And we haven't even talked about the fact that we're into the pit window here. Now, we're probably expecting to go a little bit longer, maybe about 10 more minutes for these GT cars, shorter for the prototypes, Joey. But, I mean, gosh, we've been so caught up in the action out there, we haven't even touched on pit strategy.
Well, that's a really good point, and that might be something that these composite Porsches start to look at, is maybe we sneak in a few laps ahead of Bradley Haley in that Audi, turn some quick laps and some fresh, clean air, and get the pass done in the pits.
Yeah, that would make the most sense.
Oh, Billy Smith's off. Billy Smith's off, and he's in the fence. At turn 3, it's caught another driver out.
Oh, Quebec, unfortunately, is not going to be the easy corner, if you will, on this one. Twice now, front runners. In fact, wasn't that twice second place has run wide through there?
Yeah, and we got some understanding actually about what happened with Paul Gibson. Apparently, because he was in VR, he sneezed through the middle of the corner and then lost everything there as someone is well off there at that section. That's another one. Is that Mo Islam or is that Dominic Dornenberg who's found himself off? It's Mo Islam who's off, so it's all kicking off now. But what happened to Paul Gibson was that he sneezed, his VR came off his head, he couldn't see anything that was going on, and then he found himself in the barriers. You then look at what's happened there with Billy Smith II, that came out of nowhere, same corner.
I've heard some strange things with VR headsets. That's a first for me as far as a reasoning for a wreck. I've heard of sweat building up and getting into someone's eyes on a headset, but it looks like...
This is Adam Satterfield, Joe. This was the battle for the GTAM lead. He was right behind Sheldon Rosenbaum and had been for a while.
And he goes from second in that class down to what looks like about 7th now. So that is a huge blow to him, especially, I believe we determined this was his first race in this series. Is it not? If not, I don't...
I believe it is. I don't recognize the name anywhere, and he was showing some really good speed, and I think he just looped it all by himself out there, and thankfully getting back going, but it drops him way down the AM order. I'm looking probably 6th or 7th now in AM.
If I can jump in as well, there is the black and orange mechanical flag for Billy Smith II. He's going to be in the pits for a while.
Oh, ouch. Well, what this does do is it puts Nathan Olson into P2. He has 6 seconds to make up on Darling, and he's been somewhat faster as it looks like, Rattray, one of our competitors for the AM Championship, has turned himself around. I don't see major damage on the car, and it seems to be able to get going, but another one who was looking at maybe trying to fight for that win in the AM class and suddenly is well down the timing sheet.
And I know that we're going to check out some replays here, but the Porsche, I was noticing the Porsche here specifically, when the tires get used up, they're very loose, and that back end kind of has a way of its own.
Yeah, the Porsche has all that weight towards the rear of the car. It's not going to be happy if it's lacking grip there. Yeah, you're right. We've got some replays spooled up, I believe, with Smith down to the inside, into the outside wall, actually, that Billy went a little bit wide here. Once again, Carr, a little bit of aero wake, probably helping things out again. And once he had gone into the grass, he speared straight off. Mo Islam, though, we didn't really get to see, but we do know that...
You see that there? One off in front, and then that would have distracted him on the run in there, Joe. And that's why he's gone in a bit deep and he's spun it around, because he was dealing with a bit of trouble there of his own, of maybe Thomas Fisher that might have been.
I think you might be right. Yeah, that can easily just take his eyes off the road. I think this is Satterfield that we're watching now. And his was, again, at Moss Corner, and that's a pretty typical accident there, just unfortunately hitting the grass, and that concrete wall is extremely close.
No, but you know what? I'm going to give him props. He did the right thing, stopped before going back out onto the racing circuit. And this is Rattray in that Porsche. Just the back end comes around and heavy impact into the concrete wall.
Yeah, well, at least the engine is on the rear, because that shouldn't hurt him too badly, although sometimes you can have overheating issues by hitting the front. And then Sean Reese apparently has had a problem as we were watching these replays. And this was down into Clayton once again. Does he escape the barrier? That's rare.
Well, here's one of the things you need to remember, Joe. This is an older scan of the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. If this was a newer scan of this circuit, that's runoff. You can get away with that, but not here, not on this circuit. It's a complete grass runoff.
I have to be honest, the old school side of me likes that it's not the new version of the track, because in the sim world, we don't have life and limb to worry about. I say give the drivers a challenge. In the real world, definitely I'd rather see people be able to live to fight another day. So he's back on the track, and he's rolling in that Lamborghini, just about hitting the halfway mark. A real quick update. Darling is still leading in the prototypes. It's about 4 seconds. It's coming down. He's going to have to push hard to keep Olsen behind him. Johan Shirazi, we haven't talked about him, but he's only got 0.4 of a second over Ross Booth. But that has not changed around since we've had an earlier incident. And then down in the AM category, Sheldon Rosenbaum leads Margarella by about 3.5 seconds.
And yeah, that AM category, it's spread out just a little bit, but looks like Franco Margarella is trying to hunt down Sheldon Rosenbaum out there. And really, that battle for the P3 that we're looking at, this is Bradley Haley still being hounded by Young Park and Robert Cast. Ryan Robertson joined the party there in the Ferrari, but the story is the Porsche can't get by the Audi.
He's going to cover off the inside. Clearly, he feels under threat, because I don't think we've seen him cover that aggressively down into the corner yet. Here we go. Great exit by Young Park, but it's hard to make passes, shockingly, down into the Moss hairpin just because of that entry. They're going to get interrupted by Nate Gruchelski. Third in the prototypes as Park almost has contact with Cast.
That was pretty close between the two teammates there, and Joe, this is the one thing that separates out this battle, is when the prototypes come through and then give it a few corners, it closes right back on up.
I'll tell you what as well, Joe, just as the two of Tinsey and Grzelski go through, they had this amazing back and forth about 10 laps ago on the radio, where it was a case of Grzelski was saying, come on, we need to work together, we need to catch up Olsen, we need to start drafting. And Robert Tinsey decided, okay, let's have a battle instead. So they had a battle, and Grzelski just put the point as we now get pit stops now in, as both Peterson comes in and Houston down in onto the lane, and we'll be joined by the injured Patrick McDaniel in terms of his machine. But Nate Grzelski just went back over the radio and said, you know, we're supposed to be working together here, as in, come on, you know the game, let's play it.
Yeah, so Peterson already has been knocked pretty far back, but Houston still inside the top 10. Maybe he's turned over a new leaf here. If he can do that and manage to stay out of trouble, then that'll do a lot to help his reputation, I'm sure. He sits in 8th, and that's even with the pit stop. Should have a good finish if he can bring it home as we continue to watch the battle for the lead here for the GT Pros. Shirazi ahead of Booth. It is so tough here to pass, Joey, that I wonder if that little mistake is going to wind up being critical for Booth.
You know, he's kicking himself. What was that, lap 2 that he just ran a little bit wide there in Moss Corner? But I'll give it to him. He's been separated by about a second and a half this whole time, and he's now closed it in to within that heavy draft distance. He's a threat now for any overcut, undercut on the pit stop.
Absolutely. Always got to be thinking about the 3D chess that you have to play in this series as they also get split apart by the prototype of Gruchelski briefly. He manages to go by them without any incident. They do have Robert Tinsley close behind as well, but I think he's not going to be as much of an issue. He's not going to pass until they get down to the Andretti straight as we ride on board with Booth.
It's all coming out of this hairpin here, getting the traction, the power down, and going to have a prototype go flying by on the right side here. And Shirazi kind of used the middle of the racetrack. Booth just given extra room, and now he tucks back into the slipstream, although similar top speed levels between the two Porsches at the end of the straightaway.
Shirazi has taken 2 wins so far, but didn't have a great day back at Detroit, an 11th place. In fact, missed on the podium at Watkins Glen with a 4th as well after he had a string of podiums, a second, a first, and another first all together. So can he bring it back to where he seemed to be quite comfortable in the middle of the season? Again, we're in the late stages as well, Joey, so every point matters from here.
You're right. Every point does matter, and Ross Booth is also one of those championship points contenders there in GT Pro. And I don't want to take anything away from these two Porsches because you look at the gap back to Bradley Haley in 3rd place, already 11, almost 12 seconds. These two Porsches are turning about a half a second faster than our final podium position.
Yeah, they've absolutely checked out. And that's in spite of Booth having that off a little bit earlier on. Just tells you the pace that they've managed to run here today. So up the hill once again. Should be going, I would imagine, a little bit longer than this, unless you do want to try and pull some trickery in pit lane for Ross Booth. But watch the 03. There's a little bit of a defense from the 66 that time, Joey.
Yeah, and I think that it's probably wise to take the inside part of the racetrack, especially when you're dealing with a similar car. They can't be making speed in too many different areas out there. And that was going to be the other thing about the pit strategy, Joe, is that probably pretty similar fuel consumption between these two.
Yeah, that's true, especially since it was Booth leading the way for part of it, so he probably gave some fuel saving to him briefly. Looks like Robert Tinsley, Jake, has come into pit lane, so we're getting a few more of our prototypes affecting their fuel strategies.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of delay in terms of that strategy. A lot of drivers are going to want to go as far as the fuel can take them, really burn the tank down to 0, and then once that tank does hit 0, they can go out, because the less fuel they have in that car, the lighter that car is. And if it's lighter, it's faster. That's just pure mechanics they go through. Got a little GT there, Porsche now starting to run in, so we're now starting to get a little bit of that, you know, cross-contamination between the two classes thinking about the pits. And let's just remember here, Joe, it's a troublesome pit stop because Nate Grzelski has been bottled up and has had a massive accident coming into the pits.
Uh-oh. And yeah, I always make a note about this because I've seen it happen too many times. The pit entry can be maximized, but it can also make you look a fool. We need a replay of the 69 here. He, unfortunately, was the latter in this case.
Yeah, no, this isn't nice. You can see on the brakes, grass on the inside, too much speed, bang! Completely disintegrates the front of his Dallara P217, and his race is over and done with that hit, because you have to take the tow for that. So a massive incident there. Nathan Olsen had just come in and made his stop, so with Olsen in, that's surely the cue for Paul Darling to now dive in, as he will do now from the race lead.
Yep, so we need Dornenberg and Fisher to pit in. They get promoted up as Darling is now on the lane. He might actually get out before Dornenberg leaves and be able to keep the lead. That's not taking into account that Olsen, with his already done, could have been running slightly faster laps and might be able to leapfrog him, but that would have to be quite a tremendous swing here. So it's possible, but I wouldn't bet on it.
I wouldn't bet on it, but I think Paul Darling's had a really nice turn of pace over that opening stint. He was managing the traffic fantastically, keeping Nathan Olsen at bay. Speaking of which, in comes Thomas Fisher in trouble as the race leader leaves the pits, and he's going to be stranded out there. He's really trying to find reverse. He's going to be able to get that back turned around again, but that's, again, how quickly pit entry can be troublesome.
I was worried he was going to high center the car the way it teetered there on the curb for a second. Thankfully, he was able to get it going. So twice now in this race, we've seen pit entry gobble up a car or two. Darling's back out, and Olsen lost it. What happened to Olsen here? He's
Lost a lot.
It was 4 seconds before. It's now 10. He was 3 seconds slower in the pit stop, Jake, but something must have happened on track.
Well, 3 seconds can be easily lost here or there, and I didn't quite see what happened to Nathan Olsen out there.
He just
on
spun
circuit.
just now.
That'll do it.
Well, that is separate from the 10 seconds. It's all falling apart for Nathan Olsen. Granted, falling apart is still looking like a second place. He hasn't lost a position there, but he's losing tons of time to Paul Darling, who isn't really his points rival here today. So Olsen's still going to probably get away with this, but this is an uncharacteristic race for the 32.
I'd say. I think he now knows he's pushing too hard. He just needs to dial it back and accept you're 15 seconds back. You got 21 minutes to go. Take second place. You've got 9 seconds still over Durnenberg. And get this from Dominic Durnenberg's perspective. He's jumped Robert Tinsey in the stops.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he was about 3 seconds faster than Robert also down in pit lane. So that's what's got him up into the podium. I actually need to check to see if Dornenberg has been on the podium yet this season, as looks like Sheldon Rosenbaum is pitting in.
And Rosenbaum is our GT-AM leader, or was our GT-AM leader on the racetrack, and one of the earlier stops for the GT cars, but the pit window is open. This is the opportunity to do any sort of undercut strategy if you're stuck behind somebody on the racetrack.
So it looks like a best finish of 5th twice for Dornenberg. He's never been on the podium this season, and I'm sure this is an opportunity he's going to try and grab with both hands, but we know how fast Tinsey can be on his day, so he could try and put one over and steal that away here late in the race. 20 minutes left to go. We only need Chris Sherburne to pit in the prototypes, but the GT3 cars still see about a third of the field needing to take fuel, and one of them is coming in now.
This is our leader, Johan Shirazi, coming in, and crucially, Ross Booth stays out that extra lap. Let's see, Shirazi, all he needs to do is stop on his marks. Looks like he goes up in the air, and also Bradley Haley now entering pit road. That is going to free up Robert Cast behind him. The dominoes are starting to fall in terms of the strategy in the GT class.
I'd love to stay here with both Haley and Young Park, because Young Park was the one that pitted early to try and see if he can leapfrog him. So we'll see if this pays off or not. The 77 there on screen coming through the S's. Haley just finished his pit stop and is now trundling down the lane. Park has been stuck behind him for many laps here. Where's the cones? There they are right there. You can see the green. Now he can take the pit limiter off. It's going to be close, and I think Park's got him.
Yep, Young Park was able to execute the pass via the undercut. Great strategy from that composite number 77 on track. And trust me, he's not the only one. Robert Cast is trying to do the overcut by going an extra lap on Bradley Haley right now.
Wow. So all different strategies in the GT cars. And who is that just was that Booth? That was Ross Booth. That was our driver who's inherited the lead, but was second before the pit stops. That's not going to help him jump his rival Shirazi.
No, you need to make these clean laps while you're out front here. And looks like he got caught up by a prototype car coming through the final corner. That was the checkup.
Ooh, I have bad news. That was Houston that he got into there. So I didn't get a close look at it, so I don't want to throw Peter under the bus because that may not have been his fault. But again, just unfortunately, the poor guy does not get much respect out there sometimes, as we now see some of our Ferraris and our BMWs come into pit lane.
I thought it was close between those two. I did go back and have a little look at it, but I think that it was just a case of just being rather aggressive, and of course through the medium speed, especially if you want to try and shut the door. I think it was a little early from Peter Houston, but still within the bounds of play.
So Booth still hasn't pitted. Shirazi is out, and it's about 18 seconds between himself and Ross. Ross is now in, so we'll get the answer to the question. We need Robert Cass to pit. He's in second place. I'm wondering if this is the... Oh, what are we looking at here? Somebody looks like they're off course out of turn one.
Yeah, I'm not sure who this is right now, and more problems coming out of pit exit. I believe this is Luke Schmidt on the racetrack with problems out of one.
Haven't given Luke much airtime, and I don't think he wanted it in this manner. But unfortunately, we couldn't quite see what was going on with him with the hill in the way there. I think it was a solo incident. It looks like, I can see on my replay, he spun himself. Thankfully, didn't take anybody with him.
And I just want to report, Ross Booth, even with that incident with the prototype car, he goes to the lead right now around Shirazi via that pit stop.
2 seconds faster in the lane over Shirazi. He did spend some time tucked up behind him as he managed to save enough fuel that those 2 seconds won't come back to haunt him. Oh, as we got side by side. Yeah, that's Haley versus Eric Thomas, and Thomas is going to get through. You said Haley spun?
Yeah, he hit the wall. He hit the pit wall.
This happened out of White's corner. I found the incident here. Oh my goodness! After such a brilliant drive in third, he's got a car to the inside. But that didn't seem to affect him too much. He did get loose on his own, and then a slow, lazy spin into the wall.
It was just a big tank slapper, Joe. You saw him got loose, and then he got out on the dirt, and he's just trying to play catch-up with the steering wheel at that point, and unfortunately couldn't get it.
Yeah, I wonder if Schmitz is from the damage that he probably accrued from that incident. Car probably not handling right. Amazingly, Robert Cast is still out there and leading this race, but Booth will overtake him once he takes his pit stop. And it's actually not going to be too far between them. Remember, it was 17 seconds between Booth and Shirazi. So Cast is 15 seconds ahead of him. He might actually come out in third here.
That's what I was looking at. Ryan Robertson is currently our biggest mover in terms of the pit stop strategy game, but you're right, Joe. Robert Cast has yet to throw down the card, and he's actually our fastest GT car on the racetrack, doing 1:15.2 last lap. Compare that to Johan Shirazi, 1:15.9.
Light car, little fuel on board, and that means he can really whip it around the corners here, even with those worn tires. Is he finally coming in? Yes, Cast is finally going to give it up and pit in this time. Only 15 minutes left on the clock. This should be a very short stop for that 42 machine.
Yeah, should be a quick splash of fuel. Don't even see it going up on the air jacks. That means no tires. You're right. Fuel and go.
Let's see, up to 10 seconds now. We're looking at 14 to 16 for most. 11.9 for Robert Cast. Lightning fast stop for the 42. So Booth and Shirazi go through. Robertson coming up behind him, but Cast is to the cones, and he should have a comfy margin over the 21.
Well, it looks like the name of the game and the strategy of GT cars is pit early, get clean air, and that gets you out front.
That's Kudrowski that we see in the 35 going slowly. Had a self-spin coming down into Quebec. Looks like he's able to get it going, so nobody else involved. He falls to 18th out of the GT cars. Looks like about 8th out of the AM category. Still being led by Sheldon Rosenbaum, which we had such a close fight early on, Joey. The AMs have suddenly separated by a big margin at the front.
They are separated quite a bit. Rosenbaum has held on to it that whole race, was challenged by Satterfield earlier on, but no really kind of anybody in the rearview mirror right now. You got to go all the way back to Franco Margarella, who's actually a few positions behind in GT overall to find the next AM, and then Adam Satterfield climbing back up there in third place in AM.
Good recovery there. He's still got almost 10 seconds to catch up to Franco, but a podium at his first try, we believe, is nothing to scoff at, and that will do him well, even though he'll only be here for the final 3 races, hopefully, as they come up the back stretch once again. Oh, maybe not on the podium. Here comes Shane Hunter, and he's going to look around the outside as they dive into the S's, but I don't think he's got the grip, or does he? He hangs tight. He's going to have the inside line, but he doesn't have the bravery to send it in.
I like the way that Satterfield has been racing, though. He left plenty of room there for Shane Hunter, and here comes Shane trying to do an over-under into turn one. This is a fast sweeping corner. Looks like he's gonna get the position done, has the track spot, and Satterfield back to 4th place in AM now.
BMW versus BMW, and they are almost even nearly touching down through Clayton. They get away with it. That actually, was Thomas Fisher and Robert Rattray behind them just had a serious moment as well.
That could have been very, very scary because that was over the inside. It was Rattray running into the back of the prototype, then going through not once but twice, and somehow Thomas Fisher effectively grabs everything as exit stage left then. Bye-bye, Mr. Adam Satterfield.
The inexperience may be showing itself as the 13 falls to 13th and now 5th in the GTMs. Rattray even got by. He was the one that got into the back of the LMP2 there. And a lot of drama here at the end. You just never have a time to relax in Autobahn. It is constant.
And where Adam Satterfield went off, that was the same place that he made the mistake earlier. So just got to make the mental note to back it up a little bit in that specific corner right here in Moss Corner.
So up at the front, Ross Booth, 2.7 seconds over Shirazi. Once that pit stop happened, it's looked a little bit more comfortable for the 03. It's not completely out of a problem for him yet. He's got to try and put good laps in. He's got to try and survive, well, Autobahn being Autobahn. Oh, what's this?
McDaniel.
Oh, no.
It's been a story, Joe, for Patrick McDaniel. I've been keeping a small eye on him because he's been off here and there. But again, turn 2, that's where it's continuing to get him out there on track. Oh, hello.
And 4. Add that to the list. In the same lap, unfortunately.
That was Billy Smith. Back out 11 laps down.
And now Billy's off himself in Moss Corner.
Well, I don't think he was going to gain many positions here, honestly. But, he was inside of him. It was a little bit late. I don't know what to think about that one. It was actually right in front of Nathan Olson. So Olson could have gotten collected in that, but he managed to survive it. And Smith, is his car... Yeah, it's still good enough that he doesn't have the black and orange flag, so he at least can hopefully stay out. We'll see if he decides to duck in again here, because, the car is okay. He's going to keep on rolling. But this has been a bit of a miserable day for him. Also, Nate Gruchelski, I think, just came out of pit lane after taking his repairs, so he's going to return to the track a few laps down from Billy Smith on top of things. It's just never ceases here in Autobahn. No matter how many times we come here to Mosport, it just always puts on a show. Darling, in the meantime, his show has been basically kind of a one-man show here, Jake. It's 16 seconds down to Nathan Olson.
Yeah, this is the easiest show you can possibly have out there. You know, you go out there, you lead from the front of the field, you don't get challenged at any point during the race. I'd like this sort of race. I'd like a nice, comfortable ECU race. I've never had one in iRacing, that much I will say. But Paul Darling is just driving the consummate professional race. This is what every racer in an endurance race dreams of. Big lead and a big run going forward. So I quite like the way that Paul Darling's driven, and he's certainly making up for lost time that he had at Detroit.
Started on the pole here, and he's been mostly in the lead, I believe. Yeah, he has not relinquished the lead at any point in this race. When he went into pits, nobody was able to overtake him. It's been that solid. He rocks up behind Young Park, 5th in the GT Pros, and gives him space coming off of Moss Corner before he accelerates by up the Andretti Straight. 8 more minutes, which is going to be a fair few laps since they are just over a minute per lap here in the prototypes. Still a lot that could happen.
There's still a lot here, Joe, but P3 in prototypes, I think, is where it's at right now, because down the hill through turn 4, that gap of Durnenberg's was up at 4 seconds at one point. It's now back down to 1. Robert Tinsey, I think, has been waiting for the final half of the stint to really go, right, let's see what you're made of. You want your first podium here this season? Work for it.
Yeah, Bob the Blade's been a little bit off since we've switched over to the LMP2s. Used to be so dominant in this series, always up front, but like you said, not even a podium this time around. Can he finally notch that one up? And Dornenberg also looking for that first podium. This is going to be important for both of them.
It really is, and they're not going to have much help with the traffic off of the exit. That's going to be Adam Satterfield they're going to have to navigate around, and one's going to clear, one's not. Robert Tinsey, you're going to have to wait, sunshine, and this is where the swings and roundabouts come into play, because you're going to have to give up the 1 to 2 seconds going through, and then all of a sudden you've got to find out, well, where do you go? Dominic Dornenberg has to sit behind Billy Smith and work out where he wants to be, and Billy Smith won't mind that too much because it brings his teammate Robert Tinsey back into podium contention.
Having to slice their way past all those GT cars once again. Whoa, and behind him, Andrew Lunsford catches a little bit of the grass. Thankfully doesn't run into the prototype and catches the car before it gets into the wall. That's a brilliant save from the 666.
Yeah, that was a really good save from Andrew Lunsford. It was almost like he pulled the drift handbrake and then got it all gathered up and thankfully didn't get into the wall.
Was trying to check the all-time stats here. I do not see Dornenberg with any podiums at any time, I don't think. Yeah, I think this is going to be a first ever for Dominic, whereas we know that Robert's gotten plenty to his name in this series. So, all right, who wants it more? It's still only 0.8 of a second between them with 6 minutes to go.
Yeah, so not long left to try and find this. And if you're Robert Tinsey, the one thing you want to be doing is just hitting your marks, just finding apexes, just making it as difficult as possible for drivers around. That, I think, is going to be what is most interesting about the battle that they have. The one thing he didn't do last lap was hit the final apex. And in fact, he's just going to get that position now because Dornenberg spun it.
And unfortunately, that's going to hand it over to Tinsey now. So the podium slips through his fingers, unfortunately. And seems it is not meant to be this time. Oh, excuse me. I did find him. 2 podiums to one podium to Dornenberg. Spa in season 9. So he does have one, but his second, it might have to wait a little longer.
It might. Still might be chances, though, with the lap traffic, but you're now running out of time. You've got 5 minutes, 20 seconds, and you can say on top of that, it is now going to be about, well, okay, you're able to pick up a couple of positions here or there. Now you're just looking at the final places you can possibly get. This has been a tough race for all of these drivers, and I think the natural gaps in the field, especially in the prototype field, I think speak for themselves on just how difficult and grueling a race like this has been.
Who can survive to the finish? We've lost Ed Eisenrink, Tom Hammond, Vance Bow, Paul Gibson. That's a big name that's gone. Corey Insing out of this race. Jason Iverson didn't even really get to cover that poor 04 car. Nate Gruchelski is gone. Luke Schmidt has retired. And Billy Smith is back in pit lane again. What happened?
I don't know. Is the answer I see.
He had contact with Bradley Haley. Down into Moss Corner. Haley's already on a bit of recovery. He's still in 8th spot, and this is not going to help him.
Well, this is what you're going to see, Joe. He's going to go down the hill. He's got the position, but at the slowest point, Haley tries to up and under him, and that's never a wise decision. And Joey, you can speak to that. You know, you've got the downforce in that Audi to really sling it up into that corner.
No, I think the only argument is I think maybe Bradley was expecting Billy to kind of run the natural race.
Sorry, got to interrupt. Shirazi just went off hard into the wall in Moss Corner. Oh my goodness, at the very end of the race, he's got a second place almost wrapped up, and he got loose. He did it all on his own.
Another Porsche getting loose out there, but look at that. That's Robert Cast now up into the P2 position in front of Shirazi.
This has been a phenomenal race for Cast. He's up 6 positions from his gridding. And I honestly did not earmark him as someone to look out for at all in this race. But the 42 has been on top of it. He's been clean. He's been savvy with the pit strategy. And in 3 more minutes, he's looking at a potential second here.
Agreed. You know, it was Robert Cast that was stuck behind Young Park, his teammate, who was stuck behind Bradley Haley. And Robert was the one who stretched it longer than anybody else on fuel, made that strategy work, and here he is sitting in second place.
Trying to see if he's had a second. Yeah, he had it at Indy, it looks like. He's had a few podiums this season, but not a win yet. So he'll tie his best finish here if he can keep ahead of Shirazi, who I gotta think is probably a little bit damaged at this stage. Meanwhile, this we saw was Sheldon Rosenbaum and Eric Thomas that we had on screen briefly there that were vying for 6th position, but that's between the AM leader and 6th in the pros that we were looking at. As coming up through the S's, Ross Booth has stretched it thanks to the problem with Shirazi there up to 7 seconds now to P2 and feeling ever more comfortable. Paul Darling is going to get 2 to go next time by, it appears.
He is, and he's got still that 16-second margin over Nathan Olsen. There's not really much you can argue about the way he's gone about business today. Paul Darling is on a different stratosphere at this point. And now he just knows he's just got to tick off these laps, tick off these corners, because he's in this mode now where he's probably just in the zone. He's just trying to get through and just make sure his strategy works out to perfection. He doesn't do anything silly like run out of fuel on the final lap. I'm sure he's pretty much in this sort of zone, and you'd understand this, Jerry, as a racing driver, where you're like, well, hang on, wait, the checker flag's now?
You know, it can creep up to you, but I will say it's best not to change anything. Don't get off of your rhythm out there, because that's when mistakes can actually happen.
In fact, I think I just heard Ross Booth asking if this is going to be a white flag lap or not, and the answer is no. He's going to have to go around another time as he comes up to the S's himself. He's not going to get lapped by Paul Darling, so he'll have to carrying on, and he's, like I said, just in a very good spot right now with not any pressure from Robert Cast. Just has to bring this home. That's easier said than done, as we've seen all in these past 60 minutes as drivers have gone off in every imaginable spot on the track. But Paul Darling up the Andretti straights is quickly approaching that white flag. Well, there you go, right there with less than a minute to go. One driver off. I'm trying to see who that is.
Well, that is going to be troubles then for Robert Cancian, who's a lap down in the 199, down in 10th place, I believe. Stays ahead of Leif Peterson by half a lap. But there is the white flag then for Paul Darling, and he knows that he is about 4 kilometres, shave off 4 meters away from winning this race at a canter.
Club Michigan driver missed out on a home track there at Detroit, managing to get a win. Hopping across to Canada, is this good enough to maybe make up for that? Darling has run just a phenomenal race out here today. And really, I think the biggest part of it is, unlike many others, he stayed out of trouble. He spins up the rear tires a little bit. Not sure if that was showmanship or really did get a little loose. As there is our pro leader coming across the line to take the white flag. One more to go for Ross Booth. Paul Darling comes up towards the S's. Oh, why is Cast slowing? Is he short on? He must be short on fuel.
He's out.
Well, he's already crossed the start-finish line, I think, hasn't he? He has to keep going.
Correct.
Shirazi's going to be in front of him. Oh, my goodness. And Darling takes the win for the prototypes here. Olsen's going to get second, and Booth is looking like he's going to win as, oh my gosh, Cast is towed. He can't finish the last lap.
I was going to say it, Joe, because this is an interesting situation where the prototypes are essentially making the GT cars do an extra lap. And if you don't account for the extra time out there, you can wind up running out of fuel.
And it looks like our AM leader, I think, is going to be the last one across. He's not going to have anybody challenge him, as Ross Booth as well out of the S's and the 03. Shirazi now 9 seconds behind. I bet Johan didn't expect to get that second place that late either. But Ross Booth, despite some hiccups, is going to take the win here today in Canada.
And looks like the AM win. Sheldon Rosenbaum is going to hang on to this. We're getting more cars running out of fuel. That's Young Park on the back straightaway. Another composite Porsche didn't make it to the end, but here comes Sheldon Rosenbaum through the final corner, going to take your GTM win, and he's out of gas.
Just manages to get it to the line.
He's going to get a push. Young Park's going to get a push. Carter Cunding is going to push him over to the line here.
Wow. So, drama here today. Didn't expect fuel to be one of the talking points, or at least that big of a talking point. And I got to see if we've had a win from Rosenbaum yet this season, because we've had so many down in the AMs. We'll try and answer that question a little bit later as we watch them push across the line. I believe that's not counted as a finish, since he didn't do it under his own power. We'll see whether or not. But drivers down into pit lane. As are we heading to results here for our drivers? Yes, we're going to give you the finishing results of this event. Starting with the prototypes, Paul Darling taking the victory, 15.4 seconds in the end over Nathan Olson in P2. Robert Tinsey finds himself in third with quite a bit of fun out there along the way. Dominic Dornenberg missed out on that second ever podium in fourth. Peter Houston, top 5 for Peter. He needs a pat on the back for that one. Well done to the 14. Josh Wolf was 6, and Mo Islam, only 7 drivers on the lead lap there, finishing 7th today. Thomas Fisher was a lap down in 8th, Eddie Layton 9th, and Leif Peterson 10th, and it was Robert Canchin 11th and Chris Sherburne 12th there. Joey?
Yeah, and then in the GTs here, 13th place overall, your overall GT winner, Ross Booth there. Johan Shirazi in the second place position in GT there. Ryan Robertson comes home third on the podium. Sheldon Rosenbaum, your GT AM winner, 16th overall. Eric Thomas, 5th. Young Park, Robert Cast, Bradley Haley, Franco Margarella taking home that second place in AM, and Shane Hunter rounding out the top 10 in your final podium spot in the GT AMs.
From there, Robert Rattray finished 11th, Andrew Lunsford in 12th, and Brian Bennett in 13th. Christopher Pies, not the best day for him. He was 14th. Then it was Dale Green and Jimbo Pfeiffer. Mark Kudrowski finishes 17th, and then you get into the drivers had a pretty bad day. Kyle Pitts in 18th, Sean Reese in 19th, Adam Satterfield, looking at a potential podium here in the AM category, but winds up 20th out of all the GTs. Carter Kundinger, 13th. Billy Smith, all over the place, and finished 14th in his class. And from there, you get to many of the DNFs of this race. But not a DNF was Ross Booth, our winner in the GT Pros. Joey has caught up with him.
Well, Ross, congratulations on taking home the win here on hometown soil, call it for you. Looks like Ross is currently muted right now. See if we can get Paul Darling in here.
Hello, guys.
Yes, indeed. Our winner in the prototypes, Paul Darling. Now, I know nothing is ever straightforward, especially at Mosport, but considering the drama that we saw with every single other car, did it seem straightforward for you today?
Yeah, I think it kind of did. From what I could tell around me, it was the normal Mosport chaos, but I vibe really well with this track. The flow is so smooth, especially with the traffic, like swinging around the outside of turn 1, passing them before they even get to track out. Just such a good, smooth feeling.
We were talking during the race how, unfortunately, being in Club Michigan, you didn't get to win on home soil with Detroit. Is this close enough here, hopping across the border?
Yeah, I guess with some generous rounding, we could say that, yeah.
Well, a fantastic job out there. It seemed like for much of the race, you were sitting pretty comfortably. Was there honestly anything that made you feel under threat? Was there, especially with Nathan Olson kind of charging his way back forward for a brief time, did you think he could maybe run up to you?
Yeah, I was expecting Nate to make a pretty impressive comeback. I knew I had a fuel saving advantage from the whole first stint, but I thought he'd be closing in at the end there. But I think he had a little half spin or something, so I was pretty much in the clear from after that.
Well, that was an excellent win. We don't have many rounds left in the series with Spa coming up. Are you looking forward to that one? Because that is always a classic.
Yeah, I've missed so much of the season. It's good to finally be able to make races. So I'm looking forward to doing the rest of the season.
We're looking forward as well. That was Paul Darling, your winner in the GT Pro, or the prototypes rather. As I think are we going to give another try to Ross Booth here? Yeah, it looks like Joey's got Ross again.
Ross, congratulations on the win at your hometown track.
Finally, we finally did it. I've seemed like I've been cursed here every season of Autobahn. Something goes wrong, and thankfully tonight everything went right.
Well, now it didn't go completely right here. Now, I saw a little mistake in lap number 2, and was it tough to get back up to Shirazi, or did it actually benefit your strategy being able to save on fuel behind him?
Yeah, that was unfortunate. I was just too tense on the start and just didn't turn the wheel and lost there and ran off. Thankfully, I was able to gather it up. I really wasn't doing a whole lot of saving. The backstretch, you get a tow, but not enough that you can really save a lot of fuel. Be interested to talk to Shirazi and see what happened on the pit stop. I had an awful in lap. I had a heck of a save on the front stretch with a prototype passing me, and I thought, oh, Shirazi's really going to pull ahead of me here, and thankfully we were able to jump him in the pits, so that was nice.
And we saw that save with that prototype there coming out onto the front straightaway, so we have to go back and check on it. But most importantly, you came in here in the points lead in front of Shirazi, outscored him again. Now you're only looking at 2 races left, Spa and Road Atlanta. How do you feel going in and closing out this championship?
Feel pretty good. Spa and Road Atlanta, I think everyone's pretty good there, so we'll have to see, but I think I've got a pretty good points gap, so just need to play it smart and think about just bringing the car home in one piece.
Well, and before I let you go, Ross, anybody that you want to say hi to?
Yeah, I just want to say hi to everyone in Zip Nation that's watching on my stream here. Just want to shout out the Composite Performance guys. Heck of a job practicing and up to for this race, and shout out to our sponsors, Grid Engineering and Sim Labs, and shout out to Carter for putting on a heck of a league.
Well, congratulations, Ross, finally taking home that Mosport win.
Thanks, guys.
Looks like we've got Sheldon Rosenbaum, our winner in the GTMs, ready to talk to us. So let's see how he feels about this one, because it seems almost a little bit similar to what we witnessed with Paul Darling there, Sheldon, where, well, you just kind of kept the steady on and stayed out of trouble. Everybody else around you kind of fell away.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to have a really good setup Ryan Robertson gave me, and yeah, I just kept it clean. It's unbelievable. Couldn't believe I ended up in front.
Well, I mean, really was in front. You were 4th out of all the GT cars. That in itself, I got to think, is got to feel pretty good.
Oh, yeah, it felt golden. One of the only Autobahn races I ever won was at Mosport, so this is like my home track away from home.
Yeah, we always seem to like those tracks where we have success at a little bit better. They seem to get that shine, but we kind of always come into this one expecting this to be a bit of a chaotic race. This track gobbles up cars, especially in Autobahn. How did you prepare for this? Did you enter it, like we said, just focusing on trying to go for survival instead of outright speed?
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to keep running consistent laps and try to keep Ryan Robertson in my view and see if I could just tail him. I could watch my rearview mirror a lot when the prototypes are coming through.
Well, a fantastic finish here, Sheldon. Who do you want to thank that put you on top of the podium?
Yeah, of course, Ryan Robertson gave me the setup.
Great stuff. That was Sheldon Rosenbaum, our winner in the AMs. Speaking of Ryan Robertson, Jake has caught up with our 3rd place finisher in the GT Pros.
Ryan, Sheldon's been singing all of your praises then in terms of your setup and giving him a rocket ship. So talk about your rocket ship then to third position. What's it like trying to set up for a circuit like Mosport?
Oh, I mean, it's pretty rough, especially in the Ferrari, which is a very tail happy sort of car. And this track with all its elevation changes does not suit it all that well in some corners, but we got it dialed in and, shot it out to all my teammates that were riding the Ferrari, and super glad it worked out amazing for Sheldon. And I will take a podium and, winning over the Porsche Cup. So, or the non-Porsche Cup.
Well, you certainly take a very good run then with that Ferrari. But talk about then the middle of the race, the early to middle of the race, because it looked like it was very, very busy up there in the GTs, having all the prototypes flying through you at about 3 times a second, it felt like, with just how small and congested this circuit is. How do you keep your wits about you in a race like this? How do you look around and say, right, I need to be on this side of the road, that side of the road? Oh, there's 8 different prototypes going through. What are you thinking about?
I mean, it's being predictable. At the end of the day, it's where do they expect me to be and being there, and just watching. Like you learn we're late in the season, so you know who's gonna kind of go for those risky moves and who to give a little bit of a wider berth to. So it was that, and I took a couple nibbles at park early and realized with the 3 of us with Haley in front, I wasn't going to be able to get by, so I was just fuel saving that. So I didn't mind kind of lifting for the P2s to go by because I could catch right back up with them and stay in that draft.
You got 2 races left in the season. That for you is a 3rd place finish that, quite honestly, it was down to consistency with just how pretty much it's landmine avoidance around here. But the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps is one of those circuits which every GT fan knows religiously at this point. It's like the back of your hand when you go there. So what do you take from a circuit that gives just a little bit of everything, and what do you expect out of not only you but your Gemini satellite racing team?
I mean, I'm hoping, as always, we kick some ass and do well. It's going to be a crapshoot. I mean, this Ferrari's been all over the place. Some tracks suit it, some don't, and we're just getting wrecked by the Porsches. That's pretty much all around. So I'm going to do my best to set up the car as stable as I can, like how I had this one, and just give it to the team, and hope we all come out okay. But it'll be a fun fight at the end of the season.
It certainly will. And before we let you go off and enjoy your success with your P3 finish and your teammates' amateur category victory, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to?
Yeah, I want to shout out my team, Satellite Racing, and shout out to our sponsors, Muradness and Nemesis Lab. And shout out to Carter for running this league, and you guys for casting.
No worries at all there. Ryan D. Robertson joining us there, Joe. 3rd place overall and thoroughly deserved at that.
I agree. A great run there to a podium. But that's going to wrap us up. So a big thank you to Autobahn for bringing us on to cover this season. And also thanks to the team today, Joey, Jake, and Zach. As we mentioned, the next race is going to be at Spa. That'll be March 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern. However, until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.